Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Lech lecha. And we are dedicating this learning to the speedy and safe release of all of the hostages still in Gaza and the success and safety of all of the soldiers of the IDF. And I also want to make a special dedication to a lone soldier whose levaya was yesterday in the military cemetery near Tel Aviv by the name of Santiago Ovadia. And this young man came from Argentina, and they were worried that there wouldn't be enough people. He fell in battle, and they were worried that there wouldn't be enough people at his levaya as a lone soldier, and hundreds of people came to his levaya. And I would also like to dedicate this learning, Le'iloi Nishmato, in recognition of his heroic decision to come to enlist from a foreign country, and please God, his merit and his example should continue to light the way for all of us. And as we read the words of the Sedra, and it is the third Sedra in the book of Bereshis, and it is very interesting to think of the first Sedra of Bereshis itself, which talks about the creation of the world. And this really is Hashem who is doing creating, and that is focused on Hashem. The second Sedra of Noach talks about the actions of one man, Noach, and from Noach we go forward as a human race. We are able to start afresh through this one person. In the Sedra of Lech lecha, we meet Avraham Avinu, Avraham, our father. Although he is Av Hamon Gayim, he is the father of many nations. We consider him our very personal father. And in this Sedra, we see a partnership between man and between God. And this is something that is the first as we embark on the third Sedra of the book of Bereshis. And the relevance, the up-to-the-minute relevance of the words of the Torah, as we look at some of the events in this week's Sedra, one of which is Avraham Avinu rescuing his nephew Lot, who has been taken hostage by the warring kings. And we are in this situation, and again, we can take courage and confidence from our original, from the source of our nation, and how Avraham Avinu, with exceptional bravery, goes to rescue his nephew. And we can look at that being replicated on the battlefield now by the descendants of Avraham Avinu. And in that, I talk about Avraham as the father of many nations, because we have different religions who are fighting in the IDF, and we have different nationalities, and all of these are taking a leaf out of the book of Avraham Avinu. And if we just get inside the skin of the Sedra even more, and start with the opening words, and really so often we can spend our entire lives talking about the opening words of any Sedra. But this is chapter 12, verse 1. Vayomer Hashem el Avram, he is still Avram at this point, without the extra hey. Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetcha u'mibeis ovicha el ha'aretz asher ar'eka. And Hashem says to Avram, go for yourself. Rashi famously translates these words to mean that this is something for the benefit of Avram as he is then. This is not Avram doing a favor for Hashem. This is something, whatever challenges that Avram is going to encounter, he is still going to be buoyed by the knowledge that his actions are for his benefit. And when it says you should go from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house, there are some explanations that this is listed in order of ascending, that it becomes, each one becomes more and more difficult to leave one's country where one has lived one's life, that we've absorbed the surroundings, we're part of a culture, and to uproot from that is hard. And then from the place that we were born, equally, we've been there a longer time, we have these connections, the early years connections, and that's even harder to leave. And then when we leave a place, to leave our family behind, then that is the hardest. That's like the top of the scale of challenge, to go out and forge a new path. And there are other explanations as well. But in terms of finding such relevance and the original wisdom that comes from the words of the Torah, I heard from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson a different way of interpreting these words. And when, first of all, we consider, it says, Vayomer Hashem el Avraham. Hashem said to Avraham. There is a special, perhaps we have to take note that Hashem does not actually call out to Avraham. Like we have Vayikra Hashem el Moshe, Hashem called to Moshe. This isn't the case. And we could suggest that Hashem did not specifically call out to Avraham. Hashem was, as it were, calling out to the entire world, to calling out to every single person, to leave the prevailing culture of idolatry and debauchery, and to acknowledge the original design, the original creator, the ongoing involvement of that creator, the requirement to have moral standards. And this was not something that was addressed specifically to Avraham Avinu, to Avraham our father, but Avraham was the only one who heard it. And that is something that we need to take on board. We need to also be attentive to the sound of Hashem's call. So that's the first point, and I will return to just suggesting some ways that we can actually drown out the extraneous noise so that we can all individually hear Hashem speaking directly to us. But when we look at the words ma'artzacha, from your land, the word eretz shares two common letters with the word ratzon, resh and sadi. And the word ratzon is a will, a desire, an urge. And this mandate, lech lecha, to go forth for yourself, is telling Avraham, is telling all of us always, that we can go beyond our immediate desire, our immediate urge. And then it carries on, umir moladatecha, and from your birthplace. And we could argue that this concept of born, of not necessarily referring to the place that we were born, but referring to the nature, referring to my specific DNA, and how much of that genetic code predetermines my health, my actions, and decisions that I make. Yet Hashem is telling us, lech lecha. It is very important. We're not going to cut ourselves off from it. We're not going to ignore it, but we can go beyond it. And then finally, mibeis avicha, from the house of my father. That is nurture, and that is hugely important. Many educational psychologists will say, give me a child from 0 to 5. Especially the early formative years are so vital and have such an important effect on the kind of human beings that we become later in life. And yet, we are told, lech lecha. All of these three crucial aspects of who we are, of what we do, are not defining factors. We can go beyond them. And I think that this message is something that is so universally applicable and inspiring and uplifting, because while acknowledging the importance of all these three things, we are similarly given the koach, the energy to realize, and the tool that is suggested by the Torah in the very same verse is the instruction, El haaretz asher areka, to the land that I will show you. And although that land is specifically the land then of Canaan, and this is the land of Israel, and this is the land, the homeland of the Jewish people from the beginning of time, and however, in this instruction, we are not given those geographical coordinates because it is the uncertainty and the yet to come that is woven into those words. That is part of the message that we are not in control, that we are going to be able to rise above what we might think are the limiting factors of locality, of nature, of nurture. But in order to do that, we will have to submit, we will have to surrender, we will have to go with Hashem's plan to the land that I will show you. I haven't shown it to you yet, but I will show it to you. And that knowledge and that trust, that emunah and bitachon, is something that we can call on. We can learn from Avraham Avinu. We can learn from these words of the Torah. And that is going to give us the springboard to rise above and achieve our very best potential. So the question is how? How can I, as a descendant of Avraham Avinu, who heard that call, wasn't addressed specifically to him. There wasn't a booming, Avraham, where are you? Not at this point, that will come later. But we now are going to have to think, how can I hear that call to me? And I think that there are 3 techniques that we can use. So the first thing that we can consider, does Hashem ask us to come out of our comfort zone? Because going out from my land, my birthplace, my father's house is very much leaving my comfort zone. So in our actions, in our observance of the mitzvot, in our relationship with Hashem, we have to be ready to leave that comfort zone. The second thing is, are we bringing light into the world? Are we helping others? This is not an ego trip. Whatever I'm doing is not for my selfish benefit. It is looking outwards to others. And while the Torah does not ask us to negate ourselves, but the giving to others and the quality of chesed is something that is absolutely bound up with Avraham Avinu, with Avraham our father. But this is the second aspect that is going to help us hear the call that Hashem is calling out to us. And the third way that we can listen, hear Hashem speaking to us, is to create some quiet space and time, and then be receptive to that call. And we have the unique opportunity with the special prayers that we say at so many times of day, or even our own prayer in our own language that we're comfortable with, that we understand, to have that point of communication with our Creator. And we are going to, in this way, in that quiet time, give ourselves space and the possibility of hearing the call of Hashem. And I think in this way, we can learn from Avraham, our father, Avraham Avinu, and we can carry on his tradition and build on the incredible achievements. And it was never easy. He was majorly out of his comfort zones on so many levels. But he continues to guide us and inspire us. Thank you very much for listening. Wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom.